I just hit 2500 on chess.com. This is how I analyze my games. If you want your games analyzed, just comment on this video and I'll have a look at it. So this is a unedited, raw, and no engine analysis of one of my subscribers. I'm going to show it to you on ChessLab. I still think it's one of the best cloud-based tools. I would say that because it's something I'm building. Yeah, let's kick things off. So I'm going to actually import this in. So this is a game. Let's fetch the PGN. And you can see it's Shashir Ahmed against WWIS0. I'm going to import this in, and I'm just going to put this as unfiled. So it looks like it was a 15-minute plus 10. So again, I would recommend this for those in this kind of early part of their chess journey. So as always with game reviews, I'm not the biggest fan because it kind of generalizes a bit too much, whether it's chess.com or ChessLab. I think it's nice, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all. What I do think is quite valuable is the evaluation graph. When you are a bit earlier in your career, you will see kind of a volatile graph. This isn't too crazy, but you can see there was one big mistake here, which we will definitely cover. But also generally just how volatile is the curve. If you get a curve that is kind of trending towards -5 or +5 if you're white, then it's looking like a pretty solid controlled game. But if it's kind of all over the place, then it's very much a sharp or potentially a blunder heavy game. The other thing I do quickly look at is how many book moves were played, but nonetheless, I don't care too much of it. I mean, if you've seen any of my games, I sometimes go off book quite a lot because I focus on strategy and ideas rather than theory. So let's get rid of that and let's run through this game. So let's cover it from the perspective of the subscriber. So that's WWIS0. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. It looks like it's the Italian game. Queen f6. So this is already a pretty unique move, I would say. And immediately what I'm going to go there is to say, go to the Ultra database. And I want to show you where that is on the potential moves. So the way that you can use something like this is you can say, okay, well, I'm in this position. Here's the possible moves from black from a more theoretical perspective. And you know that from a theoretical perspective, it's probably quite sound if it's played a lot. And you can see that there are all sorts of traditional moves like bishop c5, knight f6, d6, etc. Now, interestingly, queen f6 is all the way down here. And on top of that, it's got a really high score. So high scores are, so it's color neutral. So it's basically saying 82% of the time white wins or gets a score. Higher than 50% is good for white. Lower than 50% is good for black. And you can see that this is quite drastically not so good. But this is more about evaluations. What you can do is you can click solve branch here. And what this does is it runs a quick evaluation across all the possible moves. And it tells you which moves are good, which moves are bad. As always, kind of large, this is always in the perspective of I guess, white, but larger numbers here. So green, larger numbers suggest that it's really good for white. So +1 is basically, it's called center pawns, or you can think of it as a pawn. So you've almost lost a pawn if you play, for example, f5 here. But if you play something like knight f6 or bishop c5, you're losing way less, and it's closer to equal, which is 0.00. But this is an engine evaluation, and so we don't really care too much about that. We want to think about principles and actual ideas. But why was I surprised when I saw queen f6? Well, if you look at queen f6, like the general principles in kind of early chess theory or chess openings rather, is that you're likely not moving your queen all too much, and you don't want to move your queen where it can quickly be attacked. When I first look at this, you can see that the general idea is probably something along the lines of trying to do some sort of trick here with the f2 pawn, or it's to do bishop c5 and knight e7. But the big problem is that this queen can quickly come under attack. And it's not even just come under attack because white has to do something odd or different. they can do something like d3, bishop g5. And so that's actually developing moves while getting the tempo of attacking a queen. And so that means that white gets to develop even faster, not only by having the first move, but actually by attacking your pieces as black and then being able to develop further. So if we were to just show some lines here. So for example, d3. Actually, this was what was played. And let's say you played a kind of a normal move, like I don't know. Let's just say you played d6, right? Well, here is where something like bishop g5 can come in. So white is actually developing their pieces, forcing you to go elsewhere and then castling. So they've developed bishop g5 and castle, and you've just had to move your queen twice. And so that's just a way to that I would avoid, because you're basically forcing yourself to move multiple times. So let's just initially write that. So probably not the best move here. Better ideas are bishop c5, knight f6, kind of more traditional developing moves of minor pieces. It's best to keep queens kind of defended and on kind of queen. I would say queen e7 is probably best. Well, queen e7 slash queen d8 kind of original square is best for now. Actually, so. Yeah, so the idea is bishop c5, knight f6, more traditional developing moves of minor pieces. Like maybe I would say kind of wait for better squares in the future. And so one thing to note is that when you go down to queen f6, you can see that it's plus 1.24. That's really good for white. So it's just not a move that we want to really be playing. But let's see how it goes. And actually, d3 was played, which is kind of funny. And now black played h6. And this seems fine to me, because you actually need to stop this bishop g5 threat. So my strategy here, if I was black and I had already played this, is yes, h6 seems fine, because you need to control this square, both for the knight and the bishop, because there's lots of threats coming. But on top of that is that if I was to develop, I would do something like bishop c5 and knight e7 and then castle. And the reason being is that, okay, maybe my queen is okay in this position. It can't be threatened too much now that I played h6. And after bishop c5, knight e7, maybe I can consolidate with d6 and castles, and actually my position looks okay. So let's have a look at how black proceeds. So knight c3 gets played, bishop b4, so that seems fine. Obviously, there are some tricks here with knight b5, knight c7, so you do have to be a little bit careful. Let's just showcase this. So let's say you play something like, I don't know, knight e7. This is where something like knight b5 looks really scary, because your pawns can't actually be defended here. You have to probably go king d8 to defend this pawn. Always check. You should have like one eye on these situations. Always when the knight is here and you think, oh my god, this c7 pawn is a little bit weak, bishop b4 is always a backup. So bishop b4, bishop d2 seems fine. Bishop takes. So I don't initially love this. The idea here is that actually this bishop is, I mean, generally in kind of chess theory is that yes, the bishop and the knight are equally valued, but having two bishops is usually better than having a bishop and a knight. And the reason is that you can control a lot of squares. So let's say your bishop was here and here, you would be controlling kind of all of these squares, right? And actually you can start to control a large percentage of the chessboard. And you'll see that in middle games and end games, if a bishop was here, let's say your bishop was here and here, you'll see that you're actually, maybe even better. Let's say your dark squared bishop was here and your light squared bishop was here. You'll see that on this file, you're controlling all of these squares. And that's quite valuable, because you can avoid something coming into your territory. But bishop takes, it's not the end of the world, but you are giving up a bishop for a knight, and white now has two bishops. But I guess if your idea was, okay, I'm a little bit scared now that this and this is coming in, so I need to stop this, that seems fine. So I hope either d6 or knight e7 gets played. Perfect. So again, a great move because you are protecting this square and you're enabling the bishop. Now d4. So this is where white is trying to basically break through. This seems a little bit early. I would probably castle, get my king safe first, but I guess what white is saying is I want to break through, cause this kind of this annoying queen. There are some lines there where this bishop gets messy. So let's have a look, and I'll talk you through my thought process immediately. Generally, you have two choices here. You leave it, don't allow any kind of you just don't take, you just leave it and you kind of continue developing with knight e7, or you have to take this pawn. So let's think about the line where you take the pawn. So takes, knight takes, and now this is where the threat comes alive. If you move, so I would either think of a knight takes, and maybe something like queen g6, and after something like castles, it's okay. Takes, knight takes, and then bishop takes. That's where these bishops start to get really vicious. So let's quickly just show that. This looks to me kind of uncomfortable, right? Because this is really kind of coming down onto my king. White is probably going to castle, and you know what, even give up this pawn because the threats are so large. We have just not not developed at all, and white is just like one move away from having quite a lot of control. I don't like that at all. I don't like taking here. I don't like taking here, and then giving up this. So I think my gut feeling here, and we didn't look at what happens if we just develop normally. So let's say we develop normally. Does white play there? You have to look at the line nonetheless. So if you do this, you're forced back. And it's just looking a little bit ugly here. But you can break through with c6. And maybe you castle queen g6 and then play f5. I might be tempted with this line. So the reason why you would allow this is you're giving up space, but then you're going to have to try and break through in the center with either c6 or castles and then kind of f5. So you kind of break through. It's possible. It's not kind of amazing, but it's definitely possible. I prefer that to this line because I don't like these bishops kind of leaning down into my king side. It's a bit scary. So let's see what Whist did. So, okay, bishop g4. I didn't even look at this line, so that's kind of interesting. Does this work? So we're basically just saying takes. So this is kind of interesting. This could work. So after takes, or even takes, not sure because of this line. So as whites, d5 looks quite interesting. Bishop takes, queen takes, and you just kind of take an endgame with some extra space for white. But this is definitely an interesting try for sure. Yeah, okay. So now this is an interesting question. Do you take with the pawn or do you take with the knight? So if you take with the pawn, this queen is kind of has got a better line. Has got the kind of d file. But you can control it with rook d8. And so I'm looking at something like this. So white will likely either castle or play queen e2. Yeah, seems okay. And you still get to maintain this pin. But the question is, can we improve further with knight e5? The issue with knight e5 is that you are opening yourself up to a pin, and that I don't really like. So d takes e5 is played. I like it. Bishop b5. So many pins going on. So there's really a lot going on. I would hope that. Okay, so knight g7 is played, or rook d8. So rook d8 is kind of nice because you get this tempo where you again This is the same concept. You develop and attack at the same time. So queen d3 is played. Castles seems fine. Queenside castles by white. So this is really interesting. So the reason why this can be quite powerful for white is that they are doubling down on this d file. Now you have to think, was that better than castling this way around? Possibly, because maybe we're gonna kind of kill that structure here. So I think this is fine by white. Rook d8, so yes, so you get that tempo, perfect. You kick out the bishop, I like it. And now actually this is a pretty nice position. So you've kind of, looks like you've equalized, you've got a good pin here, and there are chances here that this white king can get unsafe. So you probably want to do some stuff like queen e6, try and get this pawn and start rolling these pieces forward. So white decides to go queen c5, attacking this. Looks like you've got a couple of options here. You can either defend or you take. The reason why defending is not so good here is because white can take and actually distract one of your pieces. One of your 3 defenders gets distracted, and then they can take this at the end of it. So I hope... I was going to say that you can either take the knight here, but queen f4 is even more interesting, right? So this is a check here and attack here. Okay, so why take the rook? So let's see if you've got a tactic here. Okay, so you wanted to get an extra pawn. So the other idea here is to just simply take this pawn. You are not actually under... So the reason why you often don't take the rook here is because when you take the rook, they get the file and you don't get the file. So if you want to compete now for this file, you need to go rook d8, and that's not great because after rook takes, knight takes, maybe the queen can start to infiltrate in. So you got to ask the question why you are taking this, because let's see what your idea was. Are you going to take the pawn so you get this kind of attack here? And so so that's interesting. So you've gone this and this attacks this, but now you have to come up with the answer of, was that better or is this better? Is this position better? So, or is where are we? Yeah. So is this position better or this position better? And that's not 100% clear, but to me, I don't see why we don't do this, because actually here we're still attacking this rook, and obviously this is an actual threat. What's quite nice here is that you've got this fun tactic where if they do something like rook takes, you can actually take this rook with back rank checkmate. They have to go back here and you take. So that's actually a fun little tactic. But this is a kind of a common theme in chess where if you just start attacking lots of pieces, your opponent just has a lot to think about, right? So now white has to think about, okay, I need to protect this rook, but I can't move this rook because you're attacking this rook. Oh, but also I'm attacking this pawn. And so it's almost like you're confusing your opponent. They have so much to think about, and this is where you can kind of easily pick up some easy blunders. So I prefer this, but I don't think it's the end of the world to do your line, which is this. So they move the rook out the way, but you have won a pawn, which is quite nice. So rook d8. So now the question is why you don't take this pawn. Because I do think this is an extra free pawn. Because one thing to note is that you are also protecting this. This is being double attacked. But your rook d8 move is interesting because it's kind of attacking the back rank, so they have to solve it somehow. King c1, I'm not loving this. So generally you don't want to move closer to this queen. I would probably do something like a3 or b3 or a4 even, just to give myself a square. But okay, queen f4 check, king back, and then you go for the pawn here. So one thing to note, when you're taking pawns, you've got multiple choices here. I would lean towards this pawn. And this is more theoretical or like conceptual, is that when you're taking pawns, you don't want to be taking the pawns in front of your king when they're attacking. You would rather take pawns in the middle where you can start to roll forward. Not the end of the world, but yeah. So this is a little tactic where they're defending the rook this way. Queen e2. So again, you are doing these checks there, which I like. A3. So they play this now, and you just start eating the pawns, which I like. So I do want to kind of focus on this. So now, because you've taken this pawn and not this pawn, they now get to counterattack with this. And remember, white has only one thing they can do here, and that is go for your king. Because there's so many pawns behind, they need to go after your king, which is a little bit weak because it doesn't have many defenders. If you had taken this pawn earlier, here, they can't actually go for this. So when you're thinking about taking pawns, also think about what white's strategy is. And in this case, they're going after your king. So you could have maybe saved yourself a little bit of hassle by avoiding that. So let's see. Ooh, okay. So this looks like a big blunder in my eyes. So they've taken this pawn, and there is a clear threat here, which is rook takes and also bishop takes. So you have to solve this problem. So there's many ways to solve this problem. So something like knight takes, queen takes, you at least remove an attacker, or rook d1, rook d1 takes, you remove an attacker. So you can see how I kind of went through my thought process there is I'm being attacked twice. How do I remove some of these attackers or defend this pawn? You can also go g6 as well, which seems fine. But you took an e pawn, so I think maybe you got a little bit greedy here, so you're taking as many pawns as possible. The problem is that rook g7 is really dangerous here, and they play it. So you don't have this square, so you've got to be careful. And now this is where things get very ugly, because there are so many discovered attacks. So this rook, no matter where it goes, it's check. Now, what you do have going in your favor is that if you move anywhere else, you can actually take this bishop, because you're double attacking it. So that's just one tactic. But what white can do is they can go rook here, defend this bishop, so you can't take it, and attacking this. So actually here, out of pure kind of like initial kind of feedback, is rook g5 is a draw, basically. Or I guess you can do knight takes. Is that a draw? It's at least uncomfortable. Knight takes, rook takes, and your king is a little bit weak. So it's not kind of a draw, but you know, if you do rook g5, if you just move your king, this is the draw. This gets a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest. Like, there are situations here where you might get yourself checkmated. So I would just be super careful here. And the way I would do that initially is let's just not allow the counterattack in the first place. Let's just limit that side before going further. So let's see what they played. So they played rook g4. So this looks like a blunder, right? So they're trying to do the discovered attack, but you can stop the attack by taking. So let's hope that you did that. Perfect. And that looks like it's game. So just a blunder at the end by white. So I think that rook g5 is probably something that we need to look at. You can't take this way because of rook takes. So knight takes looks like it's the way, and then rook takes. And what is this position? So this position is still very complicated. I would probably do something like, do I check and then king a2? Not sure. Queen g6 to start defending the king. Yeah, I think something like queen g6, and then, you know, white is going to start taking some pawns. This is extremely complicated and not really very comfortable, because these pawns look extremely weak, and these are not quite rolling up the board like you would want to. So not the most comfortable, I would say. I think if you just avoided the counterattack here, you've kind of just really crushed the whole kind of the pawn structure on the king side. And white has just struggled to materialize any sort of advantage. So just to kind of summarize here, the kind of best moves. So let's go quickly run through back to the start. So queen f6, there's a better move there. H6 was fine. I think generally here I'm going to just say that keep bishops on. Two bishops are often valued more than a bishop and knight in the middle game and end game sometimes. So actually, I think your lines here were quite nice. I did actually really like this. I like the way that you played this. You go after the main files. You even found tactics here with Queen F4. And then Rook D1 was kind of interesting. I think I prefer Bishop F3 because this is like a really kind of quick win tactic. But generally, attacking more pieces, rook on H1, rook on D1, pawn on E4, just causes more problems for white. And then here, I think taking on H2, I think this is probably not the best pawn to take. Take on E4, that wins material, but also stops white's counterattack via the G file and the dark squared bishop taking on E5. Perfect. And then you take some more pawns, and I think here this is a blunder. So here, okay, so there's already like kind of that move, but and so what did you actually play here? So you played queen takes E4. So here, what I would say is so let's just go back to way is to limit white's counterattack. They really only have one option, which is to go after your king and take back some material. So need to avoid the threats on G7. So that's great. And yeah, so let's just see here. So rook G4, that's a blunder on white's perspective. So and this is a nice little tactic that you found to stop that. So overall, a really great game. I think you played the middle game really well. I think some small improvements there with the types of pawns that you took, maybe avoiding some of the counterattack from white would be great. And I think you're really on a path to some higher rated elo. So Wiss, I can also share this with you. So I can like if you just give me if you sign up to the lab, it's free. I can share this with you as an analysis board, and you can kind of build it as your kind of various studies and so on. To everyone else, if you want to get some games analyzed, I'm more than happy to do so. Just add a comment, and I will take a look.